Hi, this is my first video. I'd like to talk to you about a terrible mistake that people are making, which is prolonging the coronavirus epidemic. First, a little bit about myself. I'm a biochemist. I have degrees in chemistry at MIT, biology at Stanford University, and computer science at the University of New Orleans. I have about 35 years of laboratory experience in the field of biotech. And I'm not very good at making speeches, but so I wrote it out. So this mistake is so stupid and it is so obvious to me that it boggles my mind that people are making this mistake. And the mistake is having a closed air conditioning and ventilation system in buildings, which are facilitating the spread of coronavirus. So in practically all buildings in the United States, the air inside a building is constantly recirculated. There's very little air exchange with fresh outside air. Very little fresh outside air enters the building, and correspondingly, very little inside air exits the building. And this makes the inside of a building the perfect environment for spread of the coronavirus. Every time an infected person sneezes or coughs inside a public building, viral particles are released into the air. And contrary to popular belief, viral particles do not suddenly die after traveling 6 feet. These viral particles can linger inside the building for days. All right, these viral particles are so tiny that they can simply float around on the ambient air currents inside a building. So anyone that enters the building has a chance of breathing in a viral particle, which is all it takes to get infected. And this viral particle might have been exhaled by someone days ago. So this is completely the result of constant air recirculation in buildings and the lack of air exchange with fresh outside air. Okay, the United States is a well-developed country, and we're used to walking into buildings that are perfectly temperature controlled, either by heating or cooling systems. And these ventilation systems were designed solely for comfort. They were not designed to deal with a pandemic situation, a pandemic virus. So the ventilation systems are the major safety hazard in this pandemic. Modern heating and air conditioning systems are helping the coronavirus spread. So how do we deal with this problem? It's actually quite simple. For all public buildings, keep all the doors to the outside wide open during business hours. Also, keep as many windows open as possible. And this will allow outside air to constantly exchange with the air inside the building. And this constant air exchange will efficiently and quickly expel any viral particles that might be inside of the building to the outside of the building. So the constant influx of fresh air into the building simply by opening doors and windows will ensure that the inside of the building is virtually virus-free and safe. So I realize that this necessitates sacrificing the comfort of a temperature-controlled building environment. However, if the alternative is the potential of getting infected with the coronavirus, getting ill, getting hospitalized, and possibly dying. So cross ventilation is the best way to achieve efficient air exchange inside a building with outside air. So in cross ventilation, air enters from one side of the building and it exits out of the opposite side of the building. So for example, the front door is completely open on one side of the building and the windows on the opposite side of the building are open. So in this case, air can flow efficiently inside at the door and flow outside at the windows, or it could be in the opposite direction depending upon the wind direction. An even better method, an improvement, would be to use fans on the windows and doors to speed up the airflow. Okay, so what if there's a situation in which a building only has a front door and all of the windows are permanently sealed closed? Okay, first, keep the front door open during business hours. And secondly, you have to consider removing one or more of the windows. during business hours. And when after business hours, you can put up plywood to prevent robbery. Um, Another more complicated solution would be to modify the building's ventilation system. And in such a modification, instead of the fan unit of the air conditioning or heating system returning air back into the building, the fan unit can direct the air outside the building. Now, the drawback of that approach is that it'll take a lot of time and it would require a professional to do that sort of modification work. So in my city and all the places that I've visited, I'm just shocked that none of these businesses will not just leave the front door wide open all the time during business hours. And these include places like Walgreens, CVS, grocery stores, doctor's offices, Home Depot, Lowe's, the Federal Express office here, and restaurants. Now, people say restaurants. Well, why restaurants? Well, I know that local restaurants are only doing takeout service right now, but there are still employees inside the restaurant preparing the food. And these employees can pass the virus to each other. So the front door to these restaurants should be kept wide open, not to let customers inside, but to let the fresh outside air inside. So when I see closed doors at a business, sometimes I'll suggest to the business that they should keep their front doors wide open during business hours. And I always get the same reply, which is it's company policy to keep all the doors closed. And this is just complete insanity. So have you ever wondered why so many healthcare workers in hospitals and grocery workers are getting infected? Have you ever wondered why so many nursing home residents are getting infected? Have you ever wondered why 900 workers at a Tyson food factory were infected with coronavirus? And I believe that the predominant cause of all of these problems is a closed ventilation system. First, the ventilation systems are simply recirculating the indoor air, and little to no fresh air is brought in. And two, no doors or windows are kept open. And in my belief, that's what has caused these problems. So solution is very simple. All that is needed to avoid this problem is simply to open the windows and doors and to constantly ventilate an enclosed space like a building with fresh air from the outside. I'll give you an example. I have a relative that lives in New York City. And this relative lives in a multi-tenant high-rise apartment building. So I advise this person to keep all of the windows to the apartment cracked open. And by slightly opening these windows, there's a constant flow of fresh air from the outside into the apartment. So this reduces the amount of air from other apartments that this person would breathe. So in my opinion, if every tenant in these multi-tenant buildings cracked their windows open a little bit, this would drastically reduce the infection rate in large cities like New York City. So I read recently that Stanford University is considering moving all their classroom instruction to outdoor tents. So Stanford University recognizes the danger posed by closed air spaces and is planning to implement this solution. I have heard that the air inside flight cabins of airplanes are completely replaced every 60 seconds with fresh outside air to minimize the probability of breathing in a viral particle. So the airlines recognize the danger posed by closed air spaces, and they've implemented a solution. So my question is, why haven't public buildings implemented a solution? Especially considering that just leaving a door open during business hours is a simple and effective solution. So if you enter a public building and all the doors are kept closed, please suggest to an employee to keep the doors wide open during business hours. Please like the video so that more people can get this information. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.